Welcome to the Wrestling with the Faith podcast, or welcome back if you've been with us for previous episodes. We're a group of regular, everyday Christians read a passage from the Bible and discuss and wrestle with how that applies to our modern day lives. My name is Evan. I'm joined as always by Dave, Laurel, Jesse, and Ben. And this week we're going to be discussing John 2:13 through 22. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." The Jews then responded to him, "What sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all of this?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days." They replied, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you are going to raise it in 3 days?" But the temple he had spoken of was his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples recalled what he had said. Then they believed the scripture and the words that Jesus had spoken. Like with our church, with Prince of Peace, we open up the doors to a lot of other groups. Like we allow other groups to use our facilities. So I know we've got, I forget if it's AA or something that uses it once a week or however often that is. And I mean, it's not exchanging. I guess that's where it kind of, to me, blurs the line a little bit, because we didn't turn the church into a market, but it's how I know how some people take a lot of the passages in the Bible very literally, where it should only be used for worshiping God and nothing else. So, which I don't necessarily agree with. To me, I mean, I think, like with AA or using the other groups, it's like we're not turning the church into the market. We're allowing others and trying to kind of make it that community, I get a sense of community within the building. So it's one of those where I feel like the line's kind of blurry.
Yeah, I mean, churches right now, throughout the country and throughout the world really are financially strapped in a lot of cases. And so there's been lots of discussion, even with ours, where, should we have someone sponsor coffee, or, some partner of the church, whether that's a funeral home or, whatever that might be, or members of the congregation who own businesses, and how much should we allow them to, take advantage of their membership and know knowledge of other people at the church in exchange to help the church keep its doors open. And so there's always a rub there, I think, that is difficult. But when I think of AA and other groups like that have kind of a common mission that we have, and we're just letting them use our building, I think that's certainly we're all in it together sort of thing, as opposed to a money source, for the church.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where, I had that, where the line gets kind of muddy thing, because it's, like you said, I mean, again, with today's day and age, we need to be able to pay the bill so that we can continue to use the space as, intended. But then again, with some of those groups like AA, it's you have those similarities, and it's allowing them to use our space so that they can also heal and grow through everything that they've been going through. So I know, one of the podcasts I've enjoyed listening to is Armchair Experts, which is Dax Shepard. If you guys don't know, comedian, actor, is married to Kristen Bell from The Good Place and, all those kind of shows. But in this, he had, earlier on in his life, had gone through AA. And it was interesting because one of the guests he had on was Nadia Bolz-Weber. So, and him, being proclaimed atheist but going through the various tenets of AA is very similar to, a lot of the core beliefs that we hold as Christians, and seeing those similarities. It was, if anyone else, whether it's you guys or whoever else, that's definitely an episode I would recommend listening to. But yeah, I mean, it's, I guess, time back to the lesson is, or to the passage is, I don't think we've turned, at least with Prince of Peace, I don't think we've turned it into a marketplace by any means. But it's, where do you draw a line? Where do you draw the line? Because especially trying to still be open and support the community around you. Or is that even the right question of drawing a line?
Yeah, I remember being on outreach a few years ago, and they were talking about how can we use our building to kind of reach people and say, we're here, and kind of be a way to reach out to people who are not Christian right now, and kind of talk to them about us. And I've always thought that was a little odd, right? That not unlike, marketing, to balance the budget. It's the same as marketing as a Christian, right? That always feels weird to me. Maybe it's, my upbringing and being more conservative in terms of being evangelical, even though our church is called Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. But yeah, so I've always thought, and that's the same thing. It's that, do we have the cool, slick service, or are we looking for the meaningful impact in your life?
I mean, I would say, at least with my experience with Prince of Peace, again, kind of coming back to us specifically, is I think we lean more towards that, trying to make the more meaningful impact. I mean, obviously, kind of for those not familiar that are newer to listening to this podcast, kind of sprung from, this group that you're seeing here or listening to here, was we were looking at starting a new worship style of worship service at our church prior to lockdown and, not being able to meet in person, where I think, while certainly I would hope that that new service, when we're able to do it again, is that kind of slick kind of thing that would draw people in. But I think where this really stemmed from us doing this was, I think we all found being able to sit down and talk through a lot of these to be much more impactful to each of us than, maybe sitting through a sermon. Because to me, sometimes that can it can feel like I'm back in school or something, sitting through lecture, depending on who's preaching. But
I guess it made me think, the previous church that I went to before Prince of Peace, they added an addition to the building, a big community room, and it was meant for people of the church to use it, or actually anybody in the whole community. People have had graduation parties, birthday parties. My family's used it for different gatherings. And never even thought of questioning of, it's not necessarily a gathering intended for worship. We're just having a birthday party. It's never even been a question in my mind that, is this even allowed in God's house? But looking at this, they're talking about selling the animals, sheep, cattle, whatever. And I don't know, we're not selling anything, so I guess we're good.
Well, and I think at that time, remember that you had to sacrifice things at the temple. And so they were selling you something to sacrifice so you could pay for your faith, if you will. And they were making money. This was a whole money market, money making scheme they had. It wasn't like they were selling stuff for you to go home with necessarily. It was here's a dove to sacrifice, and that'll cost you, 10 denarii or whatever it was back in the day. But so it was really a money-making enterprise, that was all set up. Not unlike if you think back to the 1700s and even before that, where again sacrificing to the church and giving alms to the church, and how the church was a money-making kind of venture for many folks. And still today, some folks feel like you can, kind of buy your way into heaven, sort of thing. And so this temple group was really a way, here you go, I'm going to sell you this thing to go sacrifice so that you can get closer to God. So, I mean, it really was, it wasn't, letting the community use your church so that you can be a better part and a better partner in the community. It was, how can we make money off of these people who are coming here to worship? And so it'd be kind of like if we were selling, you could come in, but in order to get a hymnal, you got to pay $1.
You get to pay to reserve a seat in the pew or something. I don't know.
With COVID, we don't have that many seats. We could maybe that could be
Oh, no.
I was saying, and putting a spin kind of like to what you were saying, Ben, of the group and, we're using the space for like birthday parties. I would like to think of, okay, yeah, it's not a worship service, but God's the one that kind of gave us all life. So, celebrating a happy birthday in another year is celebrating the life that, he's given us. Or again, with like AA groups, like, okay, yeah, not everyone in that group is going to be Christian. I certainly, to me, am not about to try forcing to them if they wanted to continue using fellowship hall, they have to all join the church. I think it's more that action of, showing that God cares, giving them that space to heal, and that the fact that it is, part of God's house. I think even if they don't necessarily believe at the time, his hand is there helping kind of guide everybody back and help everybody heal.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think there's not much doubt that anything churches do that are kind of community service and allowing things to happen in their building seems to be fine. That doesn't seem to conflict with what Jesus was saying in this passage. It seems.
So I guess flipping it a bit too is if we were to see, I would hope that we don't see it, at our church with all of us involved, but whether it was our church or some other church, if we saw them, maybe doing something similar to, okay, yeah, we're not sacrificing animals nowadays, but kind of like what Dave was saying, okay, yeah, to be able to get in, you got to pay a fee to be able to get in or something. Mm-hmm. If we saw that, what do we as Christians do about that? Do we find some cords to barge in, kind of whip everybody out, or so what's the path we take?
I like to ask the question, what would Jesus do? And apparently he would kind of destroy the place. I don't know.
Flip over the table.
So I would say too, I don't think this just applies to this particular piece, right? It was clearly the people who were working in the temple were exploiting the temple for their own personal gain. That was what was going on. And the Pharisees were making money on it also, by the way. And so I think that's where we would need to step in and say, if we saw our church going down the road of trying to be for profit, if you will, or exploiting people for money, or as we've seen, let's be honest, throughout the Christian church's history, there's people on TV and a variety of different types of preachers that have made money on the church and live and drive a Cadillac and live in a huge mansion because people donated so that their loved one could be healed. And so that's the kind of thing I think of when I think of exploiting Christianity to for personal gain, and that's really what was happening here, which was what pissed off Jesus. And well, how about that?
Yeah, I was thinking.
How about the piss
that
off
he was
Jesus
angry,
thing?
yeah.
Right? Because whenever you think of Jesus, you think, well, no, he had it all under control. He knew he was God's son. He'd never lose it, right? And yet we always forget that. Well, wait a minute, no, he was human, and here he just kind of lost it with him.
And you describing, the the TV preachers getting the Cadillacs, all that. My mind immediately went to the Genesis song, "Jesus, He Knows Me," in the music video for that, because I think it's them kind of poking fun at it. But that's just when you mentioned that, that's kind of where my mind went there. But but yeah, I guess as humans, and remembering that Jesus was the Son of Man. Okay, we can get off the rails, kind of lose our tempers. I would like, obviously, with a lot of things, and we've seen a lot of violence going on in the world today. I hope there's ways that we can, go about non-violently solving things, because with various things, whether it's politics, whatever, you get some of that violence from either side, and I think, at least from my standpoint, is coming back to love. So okay, yeah, remembering what would Jesus do. I don't think we're about to go into the audience of one of those TV churches and start whipping the preacher or something, but
and so think about exploitation. The church has exploited people, right? When this is what's going on in the temple right here, is they're exploiting people, making money to do that. And the church has done that, but also, look at all the exploitation of older adults around COVID-19 when, all this stuff's happening. They're being called for, oh, why don't you give me your Social Security and I'll make sure you get a vaccine and all this kind of stuff. So there are those people using the church to exploit people. And there's also people using a variety of different reasons to exploit people. And where are we with all stepping up and saying no and helping our neighbor to make sure that they don't get exploited by whether that's the church or some other hate organization?
Maybe unless we've got more to talk about. That could be kind of the thing of, if you as you're going through your life, if you see something that whether it's at a church, whether it's if you're a member at Prince of Peace, or if it's your own home church, wherever you may be, is make sure to speak up from a place of love. Really show. I think it comes down to that actions speak louder than words, and try and guide people towards the correct path or away from that exploitation, I guess. So and that could be on any scale, but I think it comes down to, again, showing your love and compassion to one another and to your neighbor. So thanks for joining us this week. Again, as we always, we'd love to hear back from you. So whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening through one of the various podcast services, either leave us a comment in the YouTube section, like and subscribe, or you can find us on various social medias through Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in Westlake, Ohio. We'd love to hear back from you. If there's something that you would like us to discuss or someone you would like us to have on, let us know. otherwise, keep wrestling, and we look forward to having you back.